I cheated with a family friend at our son's birthday. Now he wants me out of our home. You know that saying that when life gives you lemons, you make lemonades? Well, I don't think it's true. At least not for me at this moment. Life is definitely giving me only lemons and no possible ways of making lemonades out of it. I did something really awful, and I honestly wasn't expecting the consequences to be this horrible. My husband wants me out of our house. He doesn't want me near him or our son ever again, and I don't know what to do. He's not even trying to hear me out or even let me speak. He just wants me to disappear, and it doesn't help matters that everybody else supports his decision, including my own family. It's all my fault, though. I should never have let Jake convince me to do such a vile thing while everyone was outside partying and celebrating Nick's and my son's birthday party. I shouldn't have allowed whatever sense that told me it was just a little adventure to really take hold and then even proceed to do the act. I cheated. I cheated on my husband with a family friend at our son's birthday party, and now my husband wants absolutely nothing to do with me. My name is Amelia, and I am a 31-year-old mother and housewife. I've been married for 10 years now, and my son is only 6. Everything was perfect. Everything used to be perfect between us. We were the perfect family with our cute little son. I met Nick 11 years ago, and we got married a year after meeting. Nick was the perfect gentleman. He was nothing like my ex, who treated me like garbage at the time, and he was really loving, so it was easy to fall in love with him. Nick proposed to me on my birthday, and I remember everything being so perfect. We were the normal, average family. I didn't want to work. I loved the idea of being home and taking care of the kids, and Nick had no problem with that. We started trying for kids immediately after marriage, but were finding it difficult to get pregnant. Nick tried not to let it badge me too much, but I just wanted kids by all means, so I kept trying desperately for more than 4 years, but with no luck. It became a sort of issue for us when I wouldn't get pregnant, and Nick was trying to get me to focus on other things instead of trying to make myself pregnant, but I wouldn't listen. I wanted a baby. My friends all had their own kids, and 2 of them had gotten married right after I did. I almost became depressed when I didn't have any baby. Every month grew worse whenever I saw blood to announce the arrival of my menstrual period. It never missed, not even for a day. It was accurate to the T, and it kept making me feel even more desperate. Desperate enough to have stupidly gone into the arms of another man for comfort. It was really a mistake. I had gotten my period as usual, and I was really depressed. This time, my period had arrived 2 days later than usual. I was already getting excited, hoping that I was finally pregnant, but I wasn't, because I got my period the next morning. I was unhappy, so I went to him. Jake, my childhood friend, who was also married, but stayed in the same town as Nick and I. We barely spoke anymore because we mainly didn't have anything to say to each other, but I was feeling so dejected, and Nick wasn't home. My other friends weren't exactly my go-to choices because they all had kids and they couldn't understand my pain. I felt like Jake would understand my situation perfectly since his wife was also struggling to have a child. I should have gone to the wife so we could probably both cry and then encourage each other. But Jake's wife didn't exactly like me. She saw every female as a threat to her home and treated them as one, including me, even though I met and have known her husband longer than she had. I guess that was why she felt even more threatened by me. So I went to Jake days after I finished my period and still couldn't bear with myself for not being able to get pregnant, and he comforted me. Well, more than comforted me with sex. It wasn't intentional. I didn't mean for it to happen. One minute I was crying in Jake's arms, and the next minute we were kissing and tearing at each other's clothes. It was only after we were done with the whole thing that I really came back to my senses. Without any words to Jake, I left that evening and went back home. I texted him that night, though, told him everything that happened between us was a mistake, and that it couldn't ever happen again, and Jake had agreed. I even deleted his number after blocking him, and I wanted nothing to do with him again. I thought that maybe erasing his number would erase the thing we did that day, but it didn't. It never did. It kept hanging over our heads until it finally exploded in our faces. It was hard to ignore Jake, particularly because he was present in every family occasion, which happened more often than was necessary. Nick's mother loved to be extra, and she was always planning small parties for everything. In her words, she wanted to celebrate every little time she had left. And since everyone agreed with her and never refused her invitations to her parties, she organized more. And although Jake had been a little part of my childhood memory, he had been part of Nick's own longer. Jake had left our place after kindergarten and had apparently moved into the street Nick grew up in, and they've been friends ever since. They even went to the same university, and their parents were also great friends. So Jake's an important part of our lives. He was there at every party and every family lunch. He was always there with his wife, and I never found him as uncomfortable as I did after having sex with him. It didn't help matters when I found out I was pregnant. I was finally pregnant, and it was only after I had sex with another man. I convinced myself that it was for Nick, and when I told him, he was so happy and had announced our baby's conception to the family, and of course Jake was there too. Everyone was happy for us, and Jake pretended to be happy, but had cornered me later to accuse me of trying to give his child to another man. I convinced him that it wasn't his, even though I wasn't exactly convinced myself. It had been quite confusing because I slept with both men on my ovulation days, and it had only been a day in between. So I couldn't figure out exactly who it was I was pregnant for until I gave birth, and the baby came out looking perfectly like Nick. I was more than happy because it cleared up all my doubts. I couldn't imagine if the baby had been for Jake. The situation would have turned out terribly. Jake stayed true to his promise and stayed away from me for over 5 years. We didn't talk to each other except we had to, and that was only during the occasions always organized by Nick's mother. I was taking my time to nurture our son. I didn't have any other time to even spend with another man. I knew that Jake was seeing another woman, though. Actually, women, if the news I heard about him were anything to go by. Jake didn't respect his wife or their wedding vows, probably because the wife still couldn't get pregnant after being married for that long time. He kept cheating, and I felt lucky for Nick. He was always too busy with work to even think of cheating, and according to him, our family was more than enough to make him happy. It was clearly not the same for Jake. I knew only of one of his many lovers, and she was Betty, the recently widowed woman who lived alone. I would see him several times going there on my way to pick groceries at the market, but he never saw me once, probably too concentrated on getting indoors and doing whatever it is they did together. But I eventually joined those women on the list. I joined those conquests on his bedposts, and I blamed everything on Nick at the time. After 9 whole years of being married, Nick started acting up. Well, he wasn't, but I saw it as that. He wasn't the same loving husband that he usually was. He was very distant and barely spent time with me anymore. He would barely eat dinner before going straight to bed and would sleep off immediately his head touched the pillow. It wasn't because of another woman. It wasn't even because he found out about what had happened between Jake and I. It was because of work. He had some big project he had to work on with his team, and it was apparently their biggest project yet, and he was putting in more effort than he usually did, just to make the project a success. He came home late from working so late and slept early, and was up again in the morning to repeat the same process. But despite knowing that didn't stop me from feeling sully. He was annoying me, and it had increased the more when he spent all day working at the office and totally forgot my birthday. He was supposed to spend the day with me, and he had promised to take me to a famous restaurant for dinner that night. We had waited months to make that reservation, and it just went to waste like that. I was so pissed and refused to speak to him, not that he noticed from the way he was working so much. He kept begging me to be patient, but then it was well over a month of him working on the project and there was still no change. Even though he compensated for his absence with gifts for both my son and I, and even though our son seemed happy and satisfied with the gifts, I wasn't. I wanted his attention, and when I couldn't get it, I found it outside from Jake. Jake had come visiting that afternoon. It was on a Sunday, and he apparently thought Nick would be home, but he wasn't again. And I was pissed and started telling Jake everything. How Nick was never around, and how he always tried to compensate with gifts, but they suffice. I wanted more, and he wasn't giving it to me, and Jake had clearly seen that as an opportunity. It was seeking for his empathy that made me have sex with him in the first place, and he definitely knew how to play his cards right. He started visiting me at the house frequently, particularly after I dropped my son at school, so I was mostly alone when he came around. He told me he just wanted to keep my company as old-time friends, and I foolishly agreed. It was supposed to just be harmless. I needed someone I could talk to, and it all worked out, and so when he kept visiting, I didn't object to it. I didn't object when he started even staying overnight on days when Nick wasn't around. My son was happy to have a playmate, and there was always no trouble whenever he did stay over. Nick never found out because of how busy he always is. Things were going well. We were just friends until that day when nobody had been around except me, and Jake had showed up as he usually did. I was always with my son whenever he did show up other times, so there was no way we could try any act, but seeing that he had the opportunity to try something, he did. Jake kissed me for the second time in years, and as was the first time too, I didn't resist. I just let him continue kissing me and touching me the way he was. I didn't think it was right or wrong at that moment. I just wanted and craved a man's touch, and it was only Jake's that was available, so I took it. I let him pull off my top and my shorts, and I helped him with his too, and we went all the way. There was no point regretting what had happened between us. It wasn't the first time it was happening, so I just put it off my mind. And that really was the start of our full-blown affair. Jake came to the house like it was normal for him to be there. On some days when Nick was around, he pretended like he had come to see Nick. He kept telling us that his wife kept making the house unbearable to live in, and that he wanted peace, which was why he was always at our place. Though I knew the real truth. It was so we could have sex each time. Jake had a way of making me feel like I was in control, like I was the one holding that part of our relationship and deciding everything about it. He would complain about how he's enduring his wife's behavior to me. He would tell me how I'm zero his peace, and how he regrets not seeing me first. He would tell me how beautiful he thinks I am, and how sexy I looked all the time. He tells me how he wishes that he could run away with me somewhere or anywhere so we could both be together, and it made me happy. All the words he said most times, especially when we were being intimate. They turned me on greatly to be needed like that, to have all that power over a man, even if it wasn't my husband. And it made the affair even more appealing to me. Jake was a risk taker, and I agreed to almost anything he said, and it was always fun to me at that time. The thrill of doing something you couldn't get caught doing, I was like a child with her hand stuck in a cookie jar. The more Nick got busy, the more time I had with Jake. But after about 3 weeks of having sex constantly with Jake, Nick started to round up his project. He was having more and more time for the family. He even started going on our picnic dates every weekend with our son again. He was starting to pay more attention to me. And instead of being happy about it, it made me irritated because it meant my happy time with Jake was reduced. Even though we still managed to sneak around and do what we wanted, but it wasn't nearly enough. I started to even dislike Nick's touch, because I wanted Jake's touch even more. I made excuses to get out sleeping with Nick. He said nothing about it, even though it was clear he didn't like how I started rejecting his touches or kisses, more so sex. But I didn't care. All I cared about was sleeping with Jake, and that had apparently been my doom. Because when Nick finally found out, his reaction was even more terrible than I had always envisioned it to be. In my head, I had been able to manipulate the details somehow, so that when Nick found out, he'd be angry at Jake, but not at me, because he would understand that it was because he became too busy for me, and he would forgive me, and we would continue as a family. But it had apparently been only in my head. I was delusional to think that Nick would forgive me, or think anything of me when he eventually found out. I didn't know that I was digging my own grave by sleeping with Jake. That day eventually came, the day Nick found out, and it was because I stupidly agreed to the suggestion that Jake made. It was my son's birthday party, and Nick wanted us to celebrate in grand style. We invited all his little friends over, and also his maternal and paternal grandparents, and also a few of our friends too. We wanted to make his birthday memorable. Prior that day, I had already gotten him a mini bike because I knew how much he wanted one. His father had gotten him an action figure and a new set of toys. We wrapped the gifts together and kept it somewhere so that he wouldn't see them, and he hadn't luckily until his birthday. Before that, Jake and I were having some setbacks in our relationship. A week before my son's birthday, Nick was spending so much time home, it was difficult to do anything around him. Jake was obviously becoming sexually frustrated, and so was I. We couldn't exactly sneak to any other place, not because Jake didn't want us to, but because I was too scared to. I didn't want to get caught, but then at the end, that had been what had happened exactly. I had to cook for the party, and it was quite stressful, particularly when Nick, who promised to help with the cooking, disappeared at the last minute before I could say anything. He had to take our son to the salon to cut his hair, and had apparently used that opportunity to cut his hair too, but that didn't bother me. I was just so angry and craved to relieve my tension, which was why Jake had easily convinced me to do so during that party. Everything went well from the beginning. People were starting to arrive, including Jake and his wife, who looked unhappy, especially after staring at all of the things organized for my son's birthday, but I just simply ignored her, and we all celebrated happily, with my son cutting his cake, then receiving his gifts excitedly, and proceeding to his grandparents that once he learnt to ride properly, he would take them on a ride which made everyone laugh. Everything was really perfect until it just wasn't. The ice for the drinks were finished, and I went inside the house to take more. But I didn't know that Jake had followed me into the house until he was grabbing me and kissing me like a man that was starved. I kissed him back before I pushed him away, worried that someone would see us, but Jake had managed to convince me otherwise. He told me he couldn't hang on anymore, that he wanted me and did so badly, so I agreed, but I insisted that we use the guest bathroom upstairs. It was an almost abandoned place in the house because we barely had guests stay upstairs. Most of them preferred to stay downstairs, especially Nick's mother, who would always complain of backaches and refuse to walk up and down some long stairs even though it wasn't that long. So I knew the place was always deserted as most people were using the bathroom downstairs. My thoughts were that we couldn't get caught in there and nobody would even notice that we were gone, because we were going to be very quick and back downstairs to everyone again. So I let Jake upstairs into the bathroom, and in Jake's haste to have sex, he didn't let me completely bolt the door before he pulled me to himself and started kissing me. We kissed, and quickly and as quietly as we could helped each other out of our clothes. Well, I was the one who had to go completely naked, while Jake just pulled his trousers and shorts down his legs. My dress had to go off completely, because it was a trouser combined with a top, and it was joined at the waist so it didn't allow for it to be pulled halfway. And after we successfully did that, Jake wasted no time in starting the whole thing, and while I was covering my mouth from screaming, I saw the door of the bathroom open, and Nick standing there looking at both of us with a twisted expression on his face. I let out a scream and pushed Jake off of me completely. He hadn't even seen Nick because he had his back to the door, and when he turned to look behind him and saw Nick, he was shocked too, and was reaching for his trousers and then started to come up with some silly explanation for what Nick saw. It was obvious Nick was not buying the excuse because before I could say Jack, Jake ended up on the floor of the bathroom holding his bleeding nose with his trousers halfway his legs. It would have been a funny sight if it wasn't that everything that was happening didn't make it funny. Nick started at me coldly and then turned to leave. It was only when he left that I was able to move from the spot where I stood and quickly put on my clothes without bothering with the zippers before rushing out after Nick. When I got outside, Nick was telling everybody that the party was over and that everyone could leave. Everyone was obviously surprised, and they were staring at Nick's angry face and my obviously guilty ones. I tried to touch Nick, but he just removed his hand from mine like I disgusted him. He said in front of everyone that he wanted me to pack my things and leave with my lover, and never came back again. I tried to beg him to let me explain, but Nick wouldn't listen. He was telling me he never wanted to set his eyes on me again, and that he would ensure that I never saw my son again. At that point, I was already crying so badly. I didn't know what to do or how to react. It was then Jake stepped out of the house, cradling his bloody nose, and I could see from Nick's stiff jaw that he was thinking of breaking other parts of his body other than his nose, and was only stopping himself. Nick then proceeded to announce in front of the very confused people that he caught Jake and I having sex in the bathroom, not even caring about the fact that everyone was downstairs. He told them that I couldn't even wait a single day, that I was too desperate to be with my lover, and I had proceeded to do exactly that. He told everyone that I didn't only disrespect him by having sex in his home, but I also disregarded him by having an affair with someone he thought of as a brother. He told everyone that he would get a divorce, and that he never wanted to see me again. I could literally feel how everyone was shocked, but I couldn't stop looking at Nick. It was shocking seeing him staring at me like that, in hate and with lots of disgust. It was only when my mother-in-law carried my son with promises of buying him something sweet and left that everybody else started leaving too. No one tried to say anything to me. Even my mom had been so shocked. She said nothing and only kept crying and had been led away by my father, who only looked at me for 2 seconds before leaving. My siblings had left with them, too, none of them bothering to talk to me. My friends and even my housekeeper, who had showed up later in the day to help me out, left too. The only person that had cried and ran to hit Jake repeatedly on his chest was his wife, who had eventually been led away by our mutual friends. Jake too left quickly after realizing just how much damage we both had caused. Everybody was leaving, and within some minutes, it was just Nick and I. I went on my knees, hoping that my tears and begging will get him to forgive me. But Nick too, just like everybody else, had just walked away, but not before telling me that he didn't want to come back home to see me. I was left alone with everything. All the decorations, the food that nobody ate, the drinks that were left half untouched, and then the loneliness that hovered like a plague over me. It's scary just how one stupid decision could end up ruining one's present and even future. I've been trying for the past 3 days to reach Nick, desperate to make him hear me out, desperate for him to understand how terrible I feel about what I had done, desperate for him to forgive me, but nothing is working. No one is helping me, and every effort I make to reach out to Nick have all ended up futile. Nick really does want nothing to do with again, and I don't know if I can live with that. I love him. I love Nick so much, and losing him because of Jake, who means nothing to me except for temporary pleasure, would be awful. I really desperately want to do anything to get Nick to forgive me. Even if it means me groveling at his feet for the rest of life, trying to make up for what I had done, I will do so. Please, guys, you have to help me. What should I do? Update. Hello, Reddits. It's been 2 months. 2 whole months, and my life still feels like hell. It's like every day keeps getting worse and worse, and I don't even know how to stop it. Every morning I wake up with a different type of pain, remembering everything that has gone wrong. All of the things that I have done wrong. Things that I possibly cannot even correct anymore. Nick has finally been able to get rid of me totally, not only from the house, but also from his life and that of our son. When I wouldn't sign the divorce papers he sent over, he dragged me to court, and now, sadly, we're officially divorced. I remember the look in Nick's eyes as he stared at me after the court approved of the divorce. The cold way he had stared at me before walking out. I remember the way his mother had scorned me before leaving with her son. She obviously didn't bring my son so I wouldn't see him. She too was punishing me for the things I did. I remember Nick walking out of my life, and that was so painful, and I ended up almost having a panic attack right there outside the courtroom. I'm left with nothing and no one, and knowing that I don't even deserve to be my kid's mother because of the outrageous things I've done, my heart just feels like it would burst from the pain that is now part of my every waking moment. I know it probably won't change anything, but ever since that day, I keep sending Nick text messages to apologize, even though he reads none of them. I feel like I owe it to him to repent for the rest of my life, especially after how I had destabilized not only our son's life, but also our marriage. I'm so ashamed to even show my face around our son because of how awful I had behaved. Not that Nick would even let me see them. He was totally clear on the fact that he never wanted to see me around him again, or even around him, and there's the fact that I have no right to do so anymore legally. I've ended up chasing away everyone and anyone who could help me, and now I'm stuck between painful memories and loads of regret. It's sad that I came here as my last hope, thinking and praying desperately that even if not all but someone out there somewhere will understand that I messed up and I'm willing to change. I came here hoping that even if it's just one advice I got so I could get Nick back, I would be eternally grateful. But sadly, I got nothing but shame and cruel comments. I know I deserve all that is coming to me. I know that I'm a horrible person, and I know I don't deserve to find peace even though I desperately want to. But you guys just made it even worse. My thoughts are so messed up right now, even the right therapist wouldn't be able to get past anything. I feel so depressed and lonely, and the feeling keeps growing rapidly each day. It's almost always painful thinking about what my future would be like from now on. Thinking about how hard I will continue struggling for, how much it will continue hurting, how long I will continue regretting the family I was supposed to cherish. I think every day about the safe space Nick had managed to build for us without much contribution from me. He gave us a home and never stopped providing for us. Despite being rich, he was kind, patient, and loving. He loved me so much and was always making sure that I knew that even when I couldn't give him a child and afterwards, He still kept on showing me that love until the end, until I had ruined things between us. He is the sort of man every woman prayed for. But I was just too selfish and greedy, too caught up in my own world to see exactly what it was that I had until I lost it. I miss them so much. It's so painful that I never appreciated the things I got for free and thought of them as normal until I actually now have the opposite and would give literally anything to get, even if it was only a day of that time again. My greatest mistake was sleeping with Jake. Having nothing but time to reflect on my stupid mistakes, I realized that I could have done without Jake. There was nothing he gave me other than pleasure. And in exchange for the pleasure I got from him, he managed to take everything away from me. My family, my friends, my husband, and even my child and I weren't wise enough to see it beforehand. I wasn't wise enough to understand how wrong everything could go if things got out, and I hadn't been wise enough to shield myself and my family from the evil created by my own selfishness. I could have easily stopped. I should have. I should have begged Nick for his forgiveness after the first time the whole thing happened with Jake, instead of thinking I could sweep everything under the rug. I wish I had known the end from the beginning so I could have avoided all of these mistakes. I would never have allowed Jake to keep coming around, especially after what had happened between us the first time. I wish I hadn't allowed him to kiss me and touch me that way that day. I should have slapped him and told Nick about everything instead of allowing him to touch me and kiss me even more. Instead of agreeing to sleep with him, perhaps then I will still be married to the love of my life, and I will still be the mother of my child. But instead I have ended up wasting my whole life, the life I have built for myself for the past 10 years. The coward who is half as responsible as I am for destroying my life disappeared since that day and has never shown up since then, or even tried contacting me. His wife is also getting a divorce, and she hates me so much. It shows in the way she stares at me in disgust whenever she sees me, and how she goes about telling everyone and anyone who cares to listen about the horrible things her husband and I have done. It's so frustrating living like this, not knowing anything, and relying purely on your mind, which keeps playing dirty tricks on you all the time, by imagining a new female role model in their lives, and someone who would not have done any of the disgusting things I did to hurt my family. Someone who would love and cherish those little moments that make up everything for us as a family. Someone who would be there for my son, advise him, teach him on what to do and not to do, and perhaps even give him a sibling that he had always requested for. Someone who would take care of Nick and never think of him as annoying because he becomes too busy at work to give you the affection he always did before. Someone who will not cheat on him just because she feels like it was right to do so. Someone who will take up my role as their mother and as Nick's wife. Someone who is nothing like me. I cry every day. I know that's not a piece of information you're interested in, but I cry every day, wishing I had a second chance, wishing that I didn't let that selfishness take over so much of my life and family. I wish I had not been so stupid as to think that once Nick found out, he would forgive me, as he had always done if I did something offensive to him, when I shed a little tear. But I watched Nick that day after he discovered my awful secret, and I realized that my affair had not only changed me, it changed him too, into that cold, unforgiving man that stared at me as he destroyed my life without even bothering about how I would feel. I know. I did that first, not bothering about his feelings and cheating on him. I wish I had never done what I had done. I wish I was sensitive enough to know just what I should have avoided so I didn't destroy my marriage. Knowing that I can never turn back the hand of time no matter how hard I try kills me on the inside. I know wishing will never give me back everything I've lost, but it doesn't make it hurt any less than it does right now, or make me stop wishing I can change things with every breath that I take. I know most of you don't want to hear from me again. You all think of me as an evil person with no redemption whatsoever, and I agree. There's no saving someone like me because I was the one who ruined my life. But then again, there's really no one else to listen to me. All these guilt and emotional burden that I carry around just weighs me down so much I go crazy each day. I know that you guys don't care about how I feel, but I thought writing it down will ease the guilt and regrets. But it never has. If anything, it has only added to it because all your comments on my post ever reminds me of is that it's all my fault, which is why this is going to be my last post here. I sure hope you guys don't end up like me. I hope none of you choose to walk down my path because the truth is, I might not be able to write everything I feel here, but it doesn't mean it's not more awful than you imagine it to be. Goodbye, guys.